Hello, everybody. Okay, so this week, uh, for my online students, you'll see an article I will post tonight. And to my in-class students, we already have been going over the article. So, what is it? Okay, it's called Negation, Refusal, and Co-optation, the Frankfurt School's Critical Theory of Political Protest. So the version that my online students are going to get is this one. This is the preprint version. Okay, there are some differences. The subheadings are different and there's different information in the conclusion, but will be fun. So I wanted to start until we end the course, work journal articles, understanding them, reading them, using some of the theories that we've learned, and talking about them. So instead of reading from a source text, this is going to be an academic journal article. So journal articles in different scientific fields, fields of humanities, and sociology is kind of in between, social science. We see a kind of basic format. So I'm going to, let's see, let's look at another article. This is what it looks like finished. You have the title, name of the journal, right? And you're going to notice these kind of same structure. The abstract. That explains what the entire article is about in a brief form, right? We have our friend Durkheim, and this is published in a journal of criminology. So if you want to understand an article, what's really helpful is to read the abstract first, then the conclusion. Okay? Because the conclusion, a good conclusion, wraps up the entire article in a summary and kind of drives the main thesis point home again. So read those two things first, then go through the article, right? So I'll show you in the copy that I have that I gave to the in-class students, which is a little different. We first, so put the title, you can see here, and each sort of element or subheading, right? So abstract introduction between critical theory, negative dialectics, right? All the way to conclusions. So that's how I want you to break this article up. And then in under each section, briefly summarize it. Okay, so with the technique that I talked about first, the abstract and the conclusion, we did this in class. And again, the article is slightly different to the one we have. So the actual conclusion is different wording. But if you read all of it and compare it to the abstract, you get the same main idea. So this is the first sentence. You see C and then A, conclusion and abstract. So in the conclusion, so this is a re-engagement of the Frankfurt School. It's helpful for social movement studies. And then the first sentence of the abstract, the second line, critical theory is within the Frankfurt School. It influences social movement studies. Okay, so it's talking about a connection between the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory and social movement studies. Same information. And then we see these next two sentences here. The C is the conclusion, A is abstract. The rigidity of the origin myth and social movement theory, Habermas's sociology, and new social movements. So we're starting to get different information, but the main point is compare the conclusion with the abstract. Do that first, right? Then make a list of the subheadings. They're the kind of bolded areas. So in our article, we have, you want to make abstract a subheading, introduction, negative dialectics and social movements, right? Second generation and new social movements. You want to make headings. It's basically how to make an outline, right? And then we're going to go through each section and summarize it. So for my online students, you can turn in a summary of whatever section you want. Not the abstract or the conclusion, but I'll give you like some of the subheadings you can choose from. And then we will have a discussion. So again, this is difficult material. This is contemporary social theory, which builds on other theories that we've learned, right? We've learned that the Frankfurt School is kind of Marxism 2.0, but it's a lot different from Marxism 1.0. They rejected a lot of ideas from Marx, okay, and added in Max Weber, added in Freud. So different sociologists, Max Weber, rationalization, and from a psychologist or Freud, a lot of ideas, neurosis, eros, a lot of psychological concepts, right? So this is its own sort of like mishmash. And we see this article, we'll go through the abstract right now. Let's try to understand a little bit about what this author's saying. This article outlines how the critical theory of the Frankfurt School has influenced some key debates within social movement studies. Let's go a little bit. So we already have the lecture on the Frankfurt School. And again, what I posted is greatly simplified, okay? And then we have another term, social movement studies. What is social movement studies? Let's see. Sec. Got another article, research article. Let's see. Social movement studies is an interdisciplinary subject area located at intersections of political science, anthropology, and sociology. It draws on a number of intellectual and methodological traditions to explain processes of social mobilization, collective action, collective identity formation. Social movements may be understood as mostly informal networks of interaction based on shared beliefs and solidarity, mobilized around contentious themes through the frequent use of various forms of protest. How do we say this in a simple way? People gather together for certain reasons to cause social change, some kind of social change. Again, people gather together for certain reasons to cause some kind of social change. Okay, social movement studies. Greatly simplified, not my area of expertise, but when we see new terms, we need to look through and research and piece together, definitions to find out what the article is talking about. So, second sentence. The impact of Jürgen Habermas's sociology is widely acknowledged, especially within regards to our understanding of new social movements. Who's Jürgen Habermas? I wrote the Frankfurt School, but Jürgen Habermas is one of the leading social theorists and philosophers of the post-Second World War period in Germany, Europe, and US. A prodigiously productive journalist, high-profile public intellectual, who is at the forefront of the liberalization of German political culture, second generation Frankfurt School theorist. So, second generation, what does that mean? That must mean there's a first generation, right? There was association with the Frankfurt School is only one of rather complex set of allegiances and influences and can be misconstrued. Was he really connected to the Frankfurt School? Oh, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. So, member of the Frankfurt School, second generation. Okay. There have, however, been also several sustained, albeit lesser known attempts to bring the concerns of Theodore Adorno's negative dialectics and Herbert Marcuse's critique of one-dimensional society to bear onto social movement research. So we looked at one-dimensional man before, right? So what is this author saying? Well, Frankfurt School of Critical Theory is important to social movement studies. We know that. The influence of second generation Frankfurt School through Habermas is already known in new social movements or in social movement studies. Now he's saying in the field of social movement studies, new social movements, Adorno's Negative Dialectics, a book by Adorno, and uh, Marcuse's One-Dimensional Man haven't been applied yet, or have been applied in a minimal way. And we've read a little bit of One-Dimensional Man, first chapter, okay? So that's what the author's saying so far. We're gonna finish going through the abstract. For this reason, it makes sense to outline the relevance of the first generation members of the Frankfurt School. So we're gonna find out who was in the first generation. Something that is often missing from the most authoritative overviews and textbooks on social movement theory, presenting a body of literature that often appears fragmented or only on the periphery of social movement theory. In this way, reveals a number of different themes. So what is he saying? We need to go back, outline first generation, because in the first generation, we have Marcuse and Adorno, and he's saying this form of historical sort of like survey of the first generation is lacking, hasn't been done yet. The body of literature is fragmented, right? And if we do this, we can reveal a certain number of themes, such as negation, refusal, and co-optation. The title of the article. Bam. Another way to say this, we must, certain ideas from the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory have influenced or been studied in social movement studies, particularly within that discipline, social movement studies, new social movements. Okay, and he says, so far, only the second generation of Frankfurt theorists, Habermas, has been used. We need to apply more of the first generation theorists. We're going to go through a historical overview and pick out some ideas from Adorno and Marcuse. And in those, we have this idea of negation, refusal, and co-optation. So we're starting to understand what the author's talking about. This is really cool because it's giving us another view. This is so important because there's articles and research, and a lot of times things are forgotten. This is why we need scholarship, right? There's all these articles talking about Max Weber, for example, that translate the iron cage, which is what? Disenchantment plus rationalization, right? A more accurate translation, we're not going to go through this article, is steel shell, not iron cage. And that little difference can be huge in meaning. Similarly, we have Durkheim's concept of anomie translated as normlessness. Everywhere you go, normlessness. But through papers that revisit the history and revisit notes to give us a new interpretation, we see that the more accurate translation is derangement. Normlessness, derangement. Oh, that is a huge gap. Normless, there's nothing normal. Things are upside down, random, chaotic. Derangement is a clear, focused attack on sacredness, order, sacrilegious, right? Violating of the most important sacred ideas that are in a society. Deranged, so that person's so insane that they're deranged, like flipping things around. This would be like how you would describe like a serial killer. Normless, someone listless, walking around, confused, serial killer. Totally different. Okay, so big difference. Steel shell, iron cage, still seems small, right? But these things we constantly have to go through, re-examine history, constantly have to challenge our popular ideas of some of these schools and thinkers, right? Which is cool. It means we can keep going back. It never ends, right? We need new scholars to like reappraise these periods. So to this end, the article provides a comprehensive theoretical overview of the multiple ways of how critical theory has made sense of social movements and argues that its concerns can be brought into a rewarding dialogue with contemporary social movement studies. Okay, we could use these ideas in critical theory to make sense of social movements and have an interesting dialogue with contemporary social movement studies. Okay, so your task this week is to unscramble this article, write the subheadings, write a summary, and we're going to have some ideas and discussion. And I'm going to ask you to post, just one area. Can't be the introduction, can't be the abstract, can't be the conclusion. I'll give you a choice, and we'll stick the summary in there. And when we see in our discussion, we can kind of like piece together a summarized version of the whole article. Okay, so don't it's okay if it seems confusing now. I'm going to post the instructions for the assignment and this article. Okay, just remember, first read the abstract and then the conclusion. Okay, then write your subheadings down like we did here. Okay, and they're not going to be exactly the same because your version of the article, the online students, is a little different. Then fill in each area. Okay, and through the posts, if someone did another area that you didn't, you can use their summary to kind of plug in with yours, and we'll figure out like a summarized version of the whole article. Okay, why are we doing this? I think there's a lot of negative sort of propaganda about critical theory. Okay, maybe it hasn't. Excuse me. Some of you might have heard those words, critical theory of Frankfurt School, and have all these ideas, right? It kind of goes into borderline conspiracy theories because it's really funny. A critique of critical theory. Marxists, people who, and remember, there's a spectrum of Marxism, or people who aren't even Marxists. Like, I like Durkheim, number one. I do like Marx, but Durkheim's number one for me. We look at these critiques, right, and they're valid. There's a huge body of work in the Frankfurt School. There's no coherent paradigm. It's so complex, written in a philosophical way. It's difficult to understand philosophical texts. It's very difficult. It takes time. It's detailed, right? That is a criticism compared to like the Communist Manifesto, a pamphlet meant to be read by a worker. It's still complex, but it's short and meant to be distributed. Nothing in maybe One Dimensional Man's probably the most approachable, but all these ideas in the Frankfurt School, so complex. Okay, so it's worth to go back. And there's that's just a criticism on a lot anyone can make of the school. There's other criticisms that are just bonkers, right? There's some people that think critical thinker or Frankfurt School is this like group of Jewish Marxists meant to infiltrate American society and Europe and want to bring the downfall of Western civilization. This could be not. This is like nothing can be further from the truth. Okay, our government worked with the CIA and FBI worked with members of the Frankfurt School to help gather intel to figure out ways to beat Hitler in Germany, to take out fascist governments and leaders, right? It's weird because our government, there's some factions within our society that people would call fascist, right? And I think those, like Hitler is fascist, Mussolini is fascist, right? We talked about fascism a little bit last lecture, right? and they don't like Marxists and don't like communists. It's like the opposite. Fascist is like about an elite, a business elite controlling things and everything. Marxism, communism, workers control everything. This is the polar opposite, right? So I can see why, and also there's this like sort of characterization of Marx called cultural Marxism. There is some kind of like validity to that term, cultural Marxism. First, uh, Marxism is a spectrum, right? But that word in particular is used by certain political groups to like boogeyman people, right? Same thing with critical race theory. And I think that's why the Frankfurt School is sometimes criticized, because certain people in our political system are terrified of CRT, even though it doesn't get taught in K through 12 school, doesn't get taught at bachelor's level, only gets taught at master's level sociology. Very, very, very particular. And like the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, critical race theory like lacks a cohesive paradigm. It's like these tenets, right? Can be boiled down to there's a structural racist element to certain societies where the people in power create laws to benefit certain races, and racism exists, and you can't solve it completely with law, making new laws, because people will break them. And there's ideas from critical legal studies, techniques, which says the same. People who are in power make the laws to serve themselves. This is a very general, watered down uh, description of this, but it's not that radical. Do you think that people in power wouldn't use that power to keep themselves in power? If you think that, I would question your intelligence and your sanity, because people who are in power want to stay in power. How do you think they got into power in the first place? Critical theory is just criticizing power structures. Uh, you can't just be critical though. Critical theory is just a tool. That's not a worldview, right? Criticizing everything isn't a worldview. And having a worldview and being afraid of criticism, that's like a totally like dangerous worldview. You don't want people to talk back. You don't want people to critique your ideas. So if you're afraid of criticism or afraid to live in a society where criticism should exist, be careful, because that's almost like a totalitarian, almost like fascist society. Do you want to live in a country where you can't critique the government? Scary, right? Okay. So read the article, outline, abstract, conclusion, and you'll see the posts, okay? Don't worry. After this week, no more Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, okay? So if this is terrifying to you, it's going to be over soon. One more week. There's going to be a few questions on the final, though, but I'll tell you what they are. We're going to have some cooler things that I think everybody will like after next week that we'll get into. So stay tuned. We're wrapping things up. I think we got like a month left. Hope you guys have a good Thanksgiving week. And I hope you like this different format I'm trying where we go through an article. Okay. All right. Have a good week.